Okay, so now let's get into the meat of what today's presentation is ultimately all about, what natural law is not. So I don't know how I could word it any more definitively. Okay, so for all the people out there that think natural law has to do with animals, okay, you have a retarded mindset. Your mind doesn't work according to regular speed. You have been slowed down by the social engineers, and you insist that something that has 100% nothing to do with what you are talking about is equivalent to it. That's called mental retardation. Okay? So let's snap out of it and let's really pay attention to what's really going on. Okay? What natural law is not. Natural law is definitively not and has absolutely nothing to do with any of these things. Nothing to do with them. And we'll be taking these one at a time and going through them. Natural law has nothing to do with Darwin's theories regarding macrobiological evolution. Has nothing to do with the Darwinian notion of quote unquote survival of the fittest. It has absolutely nothing to do with what people call the so-called law of the jungle. It has absolutely nothing to do with what people call the so-called natural order of things, which isn't natural and it doesn't create order, what they think is the natural order. Okay? And here, let me just definitively state this. It has nothing to do with animals, period. Natural law has nothing to do with animals except don't cause harm to the animals. Okay? That's about the extent that natural law has to do with animals. Human beings shouldn't be harming animals because they're sentient beings. Okay? So it has zero to do with any aspect of behavior in the entire animal kingdom for any creature with less cognitive development and capabilities than a human being. So I don't know how much more clearly I could state that definition or caveat that natural law has absolutely zero to do with any aspect of animal behavior in the wild, on this planet, on any other planet. If the animal has a less developed brain, nervous system, cognitive capacity, understanding of, the ability to comprehend right from wrong, language systems, etc. Okay? There's any moron can look at the difference between a human being and the rest of animals on this planet. If you can't, there's something very seriously broken in your brain. So let's not get into the whole semantics of this. This isn't a semantical game. Okay? With the state of the world, you don't have time to play fucking semantical games. Okay? It's very clear what's meant by this. Natural law doesn't have anything to do with animal behavior. It has everything to do with human behavior. Get your head out from up your ass, the people who still want to say natural law has anything whatsoever to do with animals, because it does not. Okay? I'm sick of hearing this shit from imbeciles who know nothing and have studied no aspect of it and talk out their ass. Because that's what they are. People who talk out their fucking ass. All right? I'm just going to come out and say it just like I would to you if I were talking to you on the street. Because this is how hard-headed fucks people are. All right? They just want to state something that absolutely isn't true just to hear the sound of the verbal splatteria coming out of their gullet. That's what they want to do. Natural law is definitively not and has absolutely nothing to do with any and every human-made law, including what people call common law. This goes for all the free men on the land. Okay? Has nothing to do with common law, has nothing to do with free man on the land systems of law. Because they all give credence to and believe in the legitimacy of the laws of man. That's why they operate within their court system. And I'm telling you that all that system is people who want to be God, that have absolutely no bearing on reality whatsoever, have nothing whatsoever to do with natural law, and they have absolutely no legitimacy at all, and they don't rule anybody, including me. Okay? They want to think that because they think they're God. Nothing could be further from the truth. They're little boys and little girls who never grew up, whose mommy and daddy didn't pay enough attention to them when they're young. They have all these mommy and daddy abandonment issues, and so they grew up to be fucking psychopaths. They want to be God. That's who everybody in the whole court system and the whole legal system is. Imbeciles who think that human beings are God because they're social Darwinist trash. That's what they are. Social Darwinist trash. I'm fired up today, people. I'm fired up because I'm sick of the lack of understanding of the term natural law. You know, I was considering just calling it cosmic spiritual law because that's what it is. It's an accurate definition. But no, the phrase is natural law, lex naturalis. Okay? The word is natural law. The term is natural law. I'm not backing down. I'm taking the term. We're taking the term. You get it? It doesn't belong to you. Okay? There's a real meaning to it. That's why definitions exist. All right? You're not twisting it into something that it's not. The people who do understand it aren't going to allow it. That's how it's going to work. Okay? So we will hammer this understanding into people. Hammer it into people. It has nothing to do with any of these things. If you think it has to do with animal behavior other than human beings, you are a dunce who hasn't listened to one thing any philosopher or researcher since the dawn of time has ever said about how natural law works and operates in our world. It's called being a dunce who wants to create your own internalized definitions of things and then say that applies and it is operating in the real world when I just made it the fuck up. Okay? That's where most people are at with natural law, with an understanding of it. They have zero understanding of it. And they want to insist that their definition is the correct one. So let's take these one by one. Let's take them one at a time and go through them. People insist that natural law has anything to do with Darwin's theories regarding macrobiological evolution, the so-called Darwinian theory of evolution. And that is not what natural law is, has, or ever has been, or ever will be. Natural law has zero to do with Darwinian evolution. Oh, it has to do with real universal evolution in consciousness. It has a lot to do with that. But it has nothing to do with this clown's theories on how species allegedly transition from one species that is fully formed to another species that is fully formed, when his own theory of transitional species in the fossil record has never been borne out by actual real world evidence. People trot out certain examples, like Archaeopteryx, or this new, alleged amphibian that somehow eventually became some sort of a land-dwelling creature, And there's no transitional fossil records. There's no transitional skeletons in the fossil record. This is just what's stated as evidence to support the Darwinian theory that one species becomes another. Now, I'm not saying there's no such thing as evolution in all of creation. I'm just saying I don't accept the theory that Darwin postulated, which he himself in his later years said would have to be distinctly evidenced by a lot of transitional species in the fossil record, not one or two that they find and trot out and aren't even clear examples of transitional species. That's just what they are claiming are transitional species. Okay? But if you really look, there's no real transitional species found in nature. Okay? There are fully formed forms of species, and then they might look somewhat similar to other fully formed forms, but you never see something that is completely interspecies transitional. You don't find that in nature or in the fossil record. So now they want to postulate, it's very quick changes. It's not as fast as we, formerly thought, because they have to go back and forth into keeping people's minds occupied with belief in the theory, because this is all just part of the debate between religionists and scientists. That's where they want to keep you. They want to keep religionists on one side of the equation. They want to keep people who believe in scientism and Darwinism on another side of the equation, and atheism. Okay? Fighting amongst each other, none of them understanding natural law, therefore none of them able to really truly create a society based in real freedom. It's brilliant. You know, like I said, I can't really look at the social engineers and go, wow, I really hate you guys. I can't bring myself to really hate the dark occultists and the social engineers, folks. You want to call that whatever you want. You think that's some kind of a complex. You go right ahead and call it whatever the fuck you want. I really don't care. Okay? I'm done with what people think. I have been for a long time, but I'm super done with it, as most people can tell. Okay? I was around these people. I'm telling you, they're among the most intellectually advanced people in the world. They're way operating on a way higher level than people in the so-called freedom movement. You have no idea what their minds are like. You have no idea what they're capable of. You have no idea how advanced their willpower is. None. Unless you were involved in the dark occult, you don't know. You think you know, but you don't really know. Okay? You make the claim that you know. I'm telling you, from being around these people, I do know their mental state. I do know their willpower. And I'm telling you, it is so far in advance of what the average human being is like, it can't even be calculated. That's why they're winning. That's why they're going to continue to win. I don't care whether people like what I have to say, whether you agree with it, whether you accept it. I'm telling you, that's true. You don't know, you weren't in the position. And anybody who was in that position, they'll tell you the same damn thing. Because it's true. Okay? And unless we start understanding this stuff, don't expect the playing field to be leveled. It will never be leveled until we are operating on the same mental level of mental acuity that our enslavers are operating at. And I see no signs of that happening anytime soon. So going back to the slide, I see Darwinism as another religion. It's just something that is asked of people to believe in, just like religion is. Where there is no actual evidence for it, there is only postulation and speculation. Okay? Natural law has real-world evidence. It's called look at the state of human freedom first and foremost and exercise discernment, judgment, and common sense. And when you see societies behaving completely immorally and descending into totalitarianism, that's the causal factor connection. Morality and freedom are inextricably interwoven in the fabric of creation. There is tons of evidence to support that through all of human history. The problem is people are as dumb as 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. Okay? And they haven't studied human history. You have millennials, like I talked about last week, claiming they want socialism, and they don't even understand the definition of socialism. That's how retarded they are. And then you have people that are so retarded that they think, I'm a socialist because I'm telling you that socialism is the root of all totalitarianism. I'm sorry, that think I'm a right-winger, I should say, not a socialist, because I'm attacking socialism and telling people that's the root of all totalitarianism, including National Socialism, that somehow I'm some radical right-winger, I mean, this shows you how religious in their political viewpoints people are and how limited an understanding of polarization dialectics they have. They don't understand mind control. They don't understand the strategies of mind control. They don't know what polarization dialectics are because they're in that mental schism of there having to be these two conflicting things. The only two conflicting things, folks, are whether something is in alignment with natural law or not. Meaning, is it based in freedom or is it based in slavery? Are people condoning slavery or are they understanding that it's inherently illegitimate in nature? That's all. Nothing else. That's the only real dichotomy in all of nature. So, look, if you want to understand, this isn't going to be a long-form presentation about the proofs that Darwinism is wrong, okay? I'm going to recommend one particular researcher to do that. Okay? The researcher I'm going to recommend is Lloyd Pye. Okay? Lloyd Pye is the guy to check out as far as I'm concerned. Again, some people might like his research, some people might not. Okay? But I guarantee you'll be enlightened. It will trigger some things that you have not considered if you really look into it. See, and this is the other point, folks, I'm going to get to in a moment. Most people don't do the research. They operate from a point of belief. They don't really do the work to look into it because it takes years. You can't do this research in a day or a week or a month. It takes years to do it because you have to read, and watch and listen and watch and listen. I'm going to give you some resources with this podcast, okay? Lloyd Pye has done tremendous work, written a lot of books, put out a lot of videos, a lot of lectures, okay? He wrote a book called Everything You Know Is Wrong, Book 1, Human Origins. And he followed that up with Everything You Know Is Still Wrong. He wrote a book on intervention theory regarding how human beings were interfered with as a species in the ancient past. And then he wrote another book called Where Did We Come From? The Mysterious Alien Origins of Humanity. Now, whether you ascribe to the ancient aliens hypothesis or not, Lloyd Pye's work is brilliant when it comes to looking at hominids, of which human beings are of the family Hominidae, okay? Or we are the class of primates known as hominids, okay? Or really, we're actually not, if you really want to get down to it. We're classified as that. Lloyd Pye is really saying we're something entirely different than that. We're a hybrid that came from hominids and another species, which I would feel is closer to the truth, okay? So check out his website, Lloyd Pye, Lloyd with 2 L's, LLOYDPYE, LloydPye.com. You could check out his research material. Try, looking for his books online. If I find some of his full books, I'll link to them. But I'm definitely going to link to some of his videos, okay? So, again, this is somebody I highlighted and actually dedicated Cosmic Abandonment to, okay? Very scholarly individual. His research is incredible, all right? So, here's some Lloyd Pye videos for people to check out. You want to go on YouTube or any other video sharing site and you want to type in Lloyd Pye, Everything You Know Is Wrong. There's the actual YouTube URL. Okay, you can, pause this when you're looking at this video and open up a new browser and type that in if you want, or just type in Everything You Know Is Wrong into YouTube, Lloyd Pye. An Evening with Lloyd Pye. That's another great lecture to watch. Okay, that gets into all of his research material regarding hominids and intervention theory. He has one called Hominoids, 20 million years of suppressed history. Okay, highly recommend it. His Nexus conference from 2003, his Nexus conference lecture from 2003 is also brilliant. And then he has a personal interview called Darwin Was Wrong. Okay, now look, I'm only giving you one researcher right now because first of all, you research this guy, you can go on for like 10 years into his research. Okay, but I'm just pointing out one person. I'm not saying hinge everything about Darwinism not being correct on Lloyd Pye. No. You can launch into like 50 other researchers by looking into just one person's research. Looking at his notes, looking at all the people that he talks about in his lectures, etc. Okay, and this is what I did in my Cosmic Abandonment series. If you go forward with the research that I presented in Cosmic Abandonment, and you look at all of the researchers that I talked about, that's like a lifetime of work. That's literally a lifetime of research. And again, I talked about this last week, all right? I talked about this dynamic last week because I get flack over it, okay? And I get flack from total know-nothings. That when you say, well, let's have a conversation about it. Are you familiar with this individual's work? Have you looked into the work of Brian Forrester? Okay? And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, man. Have you watched the entire Nephilim series by L.A. Marzulli? What the hell is that? Right? Have you read all the books of the Earth Chronicles by Sitchin? Never even heard of it. Right? So it's like you're talking with somebody who only wants to present an opinion, but has actually never looked into the work of researchers who have made this their entire life's work. But then you can go to source material. Okay? You can go to material that came out of the ancient world talking about interaction with these beings. Okay? The Upanishads, the Vedas, the Eddas. Okay? The Mahabharata. The Book of Enoch. The Bible itself. particularly the Old Testament. All right, you could go on and on looking into source text, and most people don't do this. They don't want to spend the time to do the research. They just want to have an uninformed opinion and think that their opinion is as good as someone else's years and years of research. That's the epitome of hubris. So the cosmic abandonment presentation goes hand in hand with what I'm talking about. Okay, when it comes to understanding that natural law is not about Darwinism. Okay, because Darwinism isn't about real human origins. This is. All right, so you can get that in my video section. You could order a hard copy on DVD or flash drive from donation gifts on my website. So look into it's not just about my findings, my presentation about my conclusions in cosmic abandonment. That's, I feel that's important, but that's not the ultimate aspect of why you should look into this. The ultimate aspect of why you should look into this is to look into the work of all the researchers I talk about in this presentation, and also the podcast, the extended podcast series I did on it. Let's go back to what natural law is not and has absolutely nothing to do with. Let's look at the second aspect, the Darwinian notion of survival of the fittest. Okay? So when people hear the word natural, that's about survival of the fittest. That's about Darwinism, isn't it? And what they mean by that when they say survival of the fittest is they're talking about Darwin's book On the Origin of Species. Okay, now a lot of people don't know the full title of the book because many modern covers of this book in their modern printings, the modern editions that they're printed in, leave out the rest of the title, and they just call it Origin of Species. The book, the full title, if you read this entire title, is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. That's the first title. Now, many older books had secondary titles that they list, not just subtitles, but it could have been an additional title that you referred to the book as. It usually would say "or," and then it would be followed by another title. This isn't really done in most modern books. It's an older practice that was done in the 1800s, early 1900s. Okay, and before. So if we look at the alternative title for the book, it is Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Okay, now that didn't mean, I'm going to blow this up to show this to you. Okay, let's zoom in. Okay, and it says On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Survival. Now, here's the term that I'm talking about here, favored races. Now, Darwin himself did not mean favored human races. He's talking about species in the animal kingdom. However, people who wanted to take Darwinism, which had to do with survival of the most ruthless and ones who would do anything to other members of their species and other species in order to continue surviving and living, okay, and propagating their genes in the animal gene pool, okay? People in the elitist world, okay, in the psychopathic ruling class, wanted to take Darwinism and adapt it to the human domain and say, because human beings are just nothing but animals and are no different than other animals, we can take the theory that Darwin came up with in The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life, which was his alternative title to On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. We can take his theories and we can apply them in the human domain. So we would end up with, instead of which animal has the biggest teeth and sharpest claws and the highest drive to kill, to survive, and it'll do whatever it has to kill and eat other animals. And therefore it rules the roost in the animal world. Okay. And others who don't have that viciousness or that surviving instinct will just go by the wayside and be eaten and or made extinct. We're going to take all of that idea of, quote, survival of the fittest, and we're going to apply it in the human realm so that it will be considered purely the natural order when a subclass of human beings who are actually occult magicians come out on top of everybody else because of what they know about the human psychology and because of their psychopathic mindset and desire to rule. And so they can actually apply that notion of the animal kingdom, the ruthlessness inherent in the animal kingdom, and therefore they could just apply that in the human domain, and it's perfectly fine and acceptable. And their genes got them there. They were the fittest in society. Their genes made it that way. Their genes got them to that position because they were, just genetically superior and came from, a more pedigreed bloodline in humanity, that got them to that position of power and got them into the ruling class. And we could just apply that to the whole structure of humankind, the whole hierarchical structure of humanity. Let's just apply it all the way down. And that's what gives us social Darwinism and eventually eugenics, as we're going to talk about. Okay? But this is the operating system model that the elite class are working with, that the social engineers are still subscribing to and working with. And unfortunately, it is still the model that the majority of slaves who are willing slaves and who are happy to be slaves, okay, are still operating under, believing that it's true, believing in social Darwinism, believing that, these people's genes got them there because they're just the best and the brightest and they're just number one, it has nothing to do with the accumulation of wealth that happened over the years that is just passed on to them without doing anything, no, nothing whatsoever to do with that, right? Most of them never having to work for anything they've ever gotten. They're some of the weakest people. They're not the See, the only thing that makes them, quote unquote, stronger than other people in this society is because they got handed things down from future generations that often pillaged and raped and conquered to get what they had. And they are just, using that wealth and influence just to preserve their position in an artificial construct because people believe in the social structure that they built. If that social structure that these social engineers built were to not be believed in anymore by human beings and collapse, forget it. These people would not be able to defend themselves like they can't punch through a screen door. You know what I mean? They can't punch through a wet paper bag. These are the kind of people that if left to their own devices in nature would be dead within 24 hours. They'd be dead in the first 12 hours. In like a Hunger Games situation or something like that. They have zero survivability index, okay? Would not be able to do it because they're not naturally adapted to anything that's going on in the natural world. It's all artificial constructs that they've built their power upon, which require and depend on the belief of the average slave. That's why they're so successful, because people are so fucking gullible and will believe just about anything that they're told about what's real, instead of actually discovering what's real. That's why they'll believe in shit like money instead of understanding natural law. That's one of the main problems with the whole freedom community. Let me tell you, folks, the religion is their money is religion, and they couldn't give a goddamn about natural law. And they think that's going to be converted, that mindset. They believe erroneously in their own destroyed brain that mindset is going to be converted into freedom in the real world. They actually are that retarded that that's what they believe can happen. Enjoy being ruled by this class of people, dopes. That's all I have to say. Okay? Because that's what you are. That's unfortunately what you are. They're know-nothing dopes that in their hubris want to believe they have it figured out how it really works. You don't know anything, boy. You know nothing about how it works, little boy. Zero. Okay? But keep telling people that you do. People like that are a cancer in the freedom community. A cancer. And they're spreading their viral infection throughout the entire community. Okay? Because you don't understand the causal factors of what have led to the human condition of slavery. And therefore, if you don't understand those causal factors, you are in zero position of empowerment to do anything about the nature of the situation until you do correctly identify those causal factors. But these dunces don't want to do that. They just want to believe they're God because they trade positions with the sorcerer in this image in a heartbeat like that. Put the image up on the screen, full screen. See, the bulk of the freedom community and the bulk of the people who are slaves who say they want to be free, you'd trade positions with the sorcerer in a heartbeat. If all the money were flowing to you and all that influence and power were flowing to you because of an artificial constructural idea that doesn't exist in real nature, in the world of the real. Okay? See? But that's the God that's worshipped that the people in the so-called freedom or anarchist community worship at the altar of. Okay? Now, I'm not telling you, be some kind of ascetic pauper and, try to not even eke out a living in what is unfortunately the world. Okay? We need resources to do what we are doing because other people still believe in money. Okay, so you're going to have to operate within that system till we collectively recognize it for the illusion that it is and take it down and disassemble the structure. Back to what natural law is not. Let's go to the next point. We'll take them in order. The next point, the so-called law of the jungle. Okay, so many people think this is what natural law is. Okay, and this is another dialectic. We're going to keep hammering on the idea of dialectics over and over and over and over again, folks. It cannot be understated because there's this dualistic thinking. And anybody thinks that everybody thinks nothing could exist outside of these dialectics. So you hear these two things bannered about. Man's law, the rule of law. They're not talking about the rule of natural law. The rule of law is the rule of man's law. Right? Man as God being the lawmaker, creating legislation through government. That's what they say is the rule of law. No, that's called slavery. That's called moral relativism because there's no such thing as two places where the laws are the same or two times when the laws are the same. They're constantly being renewed and refreshed in every position and place and time, which is the definition of moral relativism. Okay? And then they want to give you the notion that the opposite of that is how animals behave toward each other in the wild. Okay? So they want to give you those two dichotomies. They want to give you those two dialectics, polarization dialectics, mind control dialectics. And then they want you to think that's all there is. There's no other kind of law. So you either believe in man's law as the rule of law, as the ruling law for all human beings, or you believe in we should live by the law of the jungle. And neither of these things are true or acceptable. Natural law is not the law of the jungle. Hammer it through your brain. It has nothing to do with animals or how animals treat each other. Never has, never did, never will. Doesn't mean it now and never will. Okay? So this is the title image, the overarching image that we used for the whole, title card for today's show. A lion in the fields of Africa taking down a water buffalo. Okay? By the throat. It'll kill it, it'll tear into it, it'll eat the internal organs and whatever else it's going to use as its food, fuel, and supply. And some other lions will probably join it in that. And then other, creatures who are those who come after a predator feasts and then feasts on the remains, the carrion, etc. This is all animal behavior. This has absolutely nothing to do with natural law, nothing to do with human beings. Because human beings are not these types of animals. They are of a whole different family of animalia. Okay? Which I'm going to talk about. There is a specific place when natural law begins to apply in the classification system of life. Okay? And we're going to get to that in a little bit. But this has nothing to do with natural law, folks. And you need to get out of your notion, the idea that natural law has anything to do with the way animals behave in the wild.